Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another REHI podcast episode. In today's episode, we have a very esteemed guest, Estonian Ambassador to United States of America. Welcome, Kristjan Prikk.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So you were Defense Ministry, Estonian Defense Ministry Chancellor 2018 to 2021, so just before the war.
Yes, before this stage of the war really started, even though even during this time, when I was with the Defense Ministry, I wanted to constantly remind our partners in the West, but also here in Estonia, that the war was going on in Ukraine also back then. After all, it all started in 2014. But so in the while it's not comparable what's going on in Ukraine right now. Even back then, every week there were casualties. At all times there were people manning the trenches and keeping back the Russian probing attacks and some attacks of even let's say more serious nature.
Yeah. I have the same nature of comments all the time that, when the war started, and then a part of me wants to remind her and be the guy who corrects everybody that it started 2014, because a big portion of the Western world says still it started in 2022. But actually my question would be, seeing right now where the Estonian Defense Forces are heading with their future projections, with their defense strategies being changed, and you were the previous Defense Ministry Chancellor, do you think that we're going the right direction with the lessons from the full invasion?
Generally, yes, absolutely. I may not be privy to all the current thinking and all the current activities going on there. But in general, I absolutely do agree with the trajectory. I am of the view that credible deterrence really needs very credible, capable to defend by using all the necessary ways and means available. So more investments to defense, the increase in our wartime structure, and many other steps are, I think, absolutely relevant and necessary.
Talking about these steps or these deterrence capabilities that we have or we don't yet have, there are some Estonian politicians who very strongly verbalize that we must buy tanks, we must have them. I personally am against it. I don't think it's cost effective. What do you think about this capability?
I usually rather try to avoid getting into the debates about the particular capabilities or even in some cases let's say sub capabilities, or let's say a particular munition for certain artillery or rocket system or something like that. I deeply do trust the Estonian military. The defense forces with their military advice, I think, have been not only spot on, but knowing what they did consider necessary and important in let's say 2018 to 2021 and so on, knowing that their advice back then did include some of the more high-end capabilities that we only have money to procure right now, knowing that they did see some role also for armor, including tanks, but then again with caveats and with the kind of priorities where tanks were not the highest priority, and we'd rather see higher priority given to air defense, long-range precision strike capabilities, and things like that. I think we are in a right space, so to say.
I'm glad to hear that, honestly, as an Estonian citizen, hearing from the former chancellor that we are in the right place, because in the political turmoil you see, oh, we're doing this wrong, we're doing that wrong. I personally feel the same trust for the Estonian Defence Ministry, and I feel that we're doing the right decisions. But seeing again people who say, oh, we don't have planes, we don't have tanks, we don't have enough ammunition, then sometimes I do want to yell to these people, okay, where is the money going to come from? You cannot just buy them. You need a long-term strategy of funding and maintaining, and I'm glad to hear that we're in the right direction with this.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. After all, we should never. On the one hand, we should always keep in mind that collective defense starts from our own capabilities, from our own actions. But then again, we should never forget that we are part of the collective defense alliance. So our decisions might be or might have been very different if it weren't for NATO. Mm-hmm. But particularly, I mean, the jets or air capabilities in general, they are rapidly deployable. Our allies have quite plenty of those assets. And then when it comes to armor, I myself have a anti-tank training from military, so I'm more on the other side of armor. Let's put it that way.
Your training, I read that you did a magistrate in the United States Ground Forces College.
Yeah, it's called the U.S. Army War College. So this was the school that I attended between 2011 and 2013, and as a civilian. So this is a college that prepares mostly U.S. but also partner nations, senior military officers and civilians who deal with national defense and security issues. But then again, I do have my background from Estonian national service or conscript service, as well as some training in the Estonian Defence League. Even though I have to admit that since because of my frequent long-term stays in countries abroad, because of my job duties, my Defence League service has not been as complete as I would have preferred to.
Where did you serve as a conscript?
I was mostly assigned to, or my primary assignment was the single guard battalion here in Tallinn. But I did my NCO training in or at Kuprianovi, single guard battalion in Võru, and then the reserve officer training at Megomäe, which was back then it was called the Defense Forces Battle School, close to Võru.
I'm also part Kuprianov infantry. Being a reservist infantryman and watching how infantry is deployed in Ukraine right now brings up a lot of thoughts, because my training and yours also is before the full-scale invasion, and so much has changed on the battleground doctrine since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Anti-tank role on the battlefield has gotten even more important, of course.
Right.
What was your primary weapon at the time? Was it Carl Gustav?
Yes, Carl Gustav, and then the lighter, either Soviet or Chinese versions of the I think it was M69 or something like that. So it was more than 20 years ago, and it's mostly irrelevant now, except for Carl Gustav, which is still somewhat heavy, but still a very, very relevant weapon. Yeah.
I'm glad when I saw about a year ago, I saw that they're buying these lighter versions. I think Carl Gustav 4 or 3. So glad, thank God. But I wanted to ask about.
We definitely did have the not light versions. I think it was the first generation.
Yeah, that's. You gotta eat a lot of protein after carrying that. That's so heavy. But I always had a lot of these questions, and I've asked them from different people, and I got different answers. We had a pretty big stockpile of Soviet weaponry, Kalashnikovs and anti-tank weaponry, and we have been slowly phasing them out. What happens to the old weapons?
It's different journeys, so to say. Firstly, just to remind the listeners of the podcast that unlike countries like, let's say, Poland and Hungary and some others, or Czech Republic or Slovak Republic, that were, let's say, semi-independent countries, part of Cold War Soviet bloc, nominally independent. I mean, Soviet dominated, but still independent, and they did have their own military. Hence, they also did have the legacy equipment, the stocks, everything. Estonia's situation was very different. Estonia was fully under the Soviet occupation, which also meant that we had not our own military, but actually the Soviet occupation forces were pretty much on every corner here in Estonia. Once the Soviet forces left in 1994, we pretty much asked them to take everything they had with them. So any or pretty much all of the Soviet type armament that we've had since then has been procured from different sources. For example, in case of rifles, the Kalashnikovs, or the derivatives of Kalashnikovs from China, from Romania, some other places, which also means that considering the kind of, circumstance, era and the circumstances that these were procured, most of them, these were not very high quality weapons anyway. So, and then we did get some from, let's say, former Eastern German stocks and so on. So some of these weapons have just been, scrapped because they were not good. They were, in many cases, quite old, even before we received those. And in many cases, we have transferred those weapons to next countries who have shown some interest, and that we didn't have any, let's say, political issue with the transfers, including to Ukraine prior to 2022. We have transferred some weapons, some ammunition to them, the kind of Soviet type of ammunition and weapons.
I don't have to ask that question anymore. I got a very great answer about that. I remember before 2022, just before, there was a batch of javelins, of course. Estonia was one of the first countries to send, but there was a batch of Makarov pistols, I think, I remember.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
When no country was sending weapons yet, I saw the headlines that we sent hundreds or even over 1,000 Makarov pistols to Ukraine.
Yeah, I cannot... restore or remember exactly the numbers or when and how, but there certainly have been times when we've just tried to send something. Of course, we all know that no country wins the war with Makarov pistols. After all, there is even this joke running joke that Makarov pistol is a very good weapon, but it's not a shooting weapon, but like a throwing weapon, right? Yeah. Even though I mean some Makarovs that I've shot have been pretty fair game, but it's a very ancient almost pistol. But then again, I think the more important part. It was not important. The pistol itself was not that important. The important part was to show the Ukrainians that we are with you. We are trying to get something that we have, so that you can do at least something with it. Of course, in 2024, it would be completely irrelevant to send something like that. But times have changed.
I remember back then, yes, every country was following red lines miles ago. I mean, these red lines have been crossed. Oh, don't send weapons. Well, Estonia sent Makarov pistols and javelins, and I felt so proud that we are a small country with a past of Soviet aggression, and we decide to very publicly act against the Russians to support the Ukrainians. I felt very proud as an Estonian, and I still do about that. So it's symbolic value of those pistols were... Yeah. Greater.
There's always with weapons. What we have to keep in mind is that there are all these special conditions on, as it's called, the third-party transfers. So usually the country that has manufactured or has some key components in weapons have to give a particular permission for transfer. I believe, if I'm not wrong, I don't remember the exact circumstances anymore, but these Makarovs had a quite interesting path. I believe those were actually confiscated weapons from some kind of contraband. So this also meant that there was no legal requirement to notify anyone, but we could just send them.
That's a testament to the crazy 90s. I mean, we had so many confiscated Makarovs to send to Ukraine as a patch. Crazy times. But you mentioned restrictions on the weapons, who have details in them or who have produced them. For example, I think with the javelins, we got the permission from the United States.
Yes.
But you, as an ambassador to the United States, perhaps you can answer what is, I mean, people have different ideas about it, but what is behind the strategy of restricting Ukraine using United States long-range weapons, the restrictions? Who do they benefit?
I think we all are aware of some restrictions. We haven't seen those on paper exactly, or not, at least not the ones that I guess you are referring to, like long range weaponry. But I mean, the United States has been quite candid about their let's say assessment or assumption that lifting of some restrictions might lead to unnecessary or unwanted unnecessary reactions or escalation. I personally do believe that Ukraine has proven time and time again that most, if not all, of these assumptions have turned out to be not correct, or that has been very much of this, let's say, erring on the side of caution. So Estonia certainly has not set any restrictions to the weapons that we have delivered, and we don't think that restrictions on top of the very universal restrictions that Ukrainians have anyway. I'm referring to the international humanitarian law, or the, let's say, the wartime rules. That these are enough, and we don't need any more restrictions than that. Please.
I think you mentioned a very big restriction that most of the Western people are not even aware of, that Ukraine is very strongly following the Geneva Conventions? Or?
Yes, it's a set of different rules, but in the heart of these are the Geneva Conventions. So the universal global rules on conduct of warfare, that there are certain things that warring parties should take into account. I guess the most the most well-known or easier to understand are the rules restricting the use of arms against the let's say Red Cross or the hospitals and the ambulances and things like that. Also the treatment of prisoners of war, for example, and things like that are all regulated universally. And I strongly believe that these rules are firm enough and universal enough, so that and we don't have any reason to doubt that Ukraine is following the international humanitarian law very precisely.
And we have plenty of evidence that Russia is not following it at all. They're breaking these rules, which means they have more maneuvering of what they attack and how much damage they cause. And that is in itself an unfair fight. Because Ukraine cannot allow themselves to do that, because the Western help and majority of their offensive weaponry is tied to them following these Geneva Conventions. So a lot of my viewers don't know, at least almost every Western weapons has a set of restrictions plus the Geneva Conventions. Ukraine is following a very guided path on this war.
Absolutely, and after all, these rules have been negotiated between the nations, so they do make sense. The assumption is that no nation wants their own soldiers or civilians to be treated against these conventions. So to follow them does make a lot of sense. I also believe that for Ukraine's fight to be successful, it's absolutely in their interest, and they have shown it. It's in their interest to follow these rules very precisely.
I'll jump back for a little bit to the topic of Estonian deterrence, because 3 Baltic states with a similar history, but all have a little bit different strategies of holding on until the allies come here, or keeping the allies permanently on the Baltic states. For example, Lithuania is now building out a full brigade infrastructure to house a German brigade, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, yeah. But Estonia is relying on a British mobile tank brigade, which should be here within hours or days. Which do you think is a better strategy in case of Russian attack?
I certainly don't think I should take liberties to let's say, criticize any of our allies, from the US to Canada to Portugal to Lithuania, for that matter. And I don't have any reason to doubt the wisdom of the Lithuanian strategy, for example. But then again, the situations are different in vis-a-vis different allies and different NATO presence in different countries. I trust that the kind of agreements that we have with the Brits and the French, who also man the Allied battle group here in Estonia, the agreements are solid enough and have enough meat on the bone, so to say, so that if we have a proper early morning and the logistics and other procedures in place, this deployable British brigade will be here in time, and serves also as a deterrent capabilities, because after all, we are training together with Brits these deployments. We know how to operate with them. We know that our plans are integrated, and so on and so forth.
This there's a conversation I heard. Now, this does not base on any facts. I just heard about it, but that before Estonian defense strategy was based on reaction, and now it's based on fighting back from the first meter taken. But the strategy of acquiring, let's say, anti-tank weaponry before was based on some modules, some numbers that are set, but now they changed it to just a fixed number of how many tanks and infantry fighting vehicles Russia has.
There have been, as far as I know, number of methodological changes in how we plan for certain contingencies and certain operations within the Estonian military. So since I don't know all of them, the details of those, I won't be able to comment those. But the kind of change that you referred to in terms of the overall defense planning, it actually reflects the evolution or change across the alliance, and this certainly has some influence or serious influence from what we've experienced in Ukraine. Unfortunately, I think I once checked it out that by the end of second day of fighting of this stage of war, so basically by the evening of February 25th of 2022, the Russian Federation had gained more territory or had occupied more territory than the territory of Estonia compared to what was under the Russian occupation before 24th of February 22. So this shows the limits of our own, let's say, territory and the risks of potentially getting occupied ourselves. We all know what happened with those occupied territories, the kind of atrocities that happened in Bucha, in Irpin, in some other places. So this is not the kind of scenario that we would want to that we could be willing to risk.
The same conversation, I mean, there was sentences like, before we were focusing on allies getting here and fighting the Russians back on Estonian soil, pushing them back, but now the strategy is pretty much to acquire so much weaponry that we could destroy every Russian offensive capability behind the Estonian border. And that is very expensive.
It certainly is, and ultimately, of course, we all have to remind ourselves, our people, but certainly also the people and leadership of the Russian Federation that our intent is to live in peace. Our absolute intent is to live in peace. But if necessary, we'll not only fight back, but we'll be able to to turn the life of the aggressor a hell.
Yes. Talking about taking the right steps, there are so many people who just comment on seeing Russian drones flying into Polish airspace, NATO airspace, and then a few months ago into Romanian airspace, and that has happened several times. And then a year ago, a missile attack took 2 Polish citizens' lives. There's a lot of talk about being brave enough or choosing to shoot down Russian air targets over NATO airspace, and that there's a fear of escalation again, but it's not destroying targets in Russia, it's defending NATO airspace and also sending a signal that, well, Turkey did it. They shot down the plane, the jet that flew into Turkey. Do you think we should have a stricter shoot down policy?
I have to admit that I even don't know the exact rules of engagement applicable to the NATO airspace close to Ukraine right now. So I cannot really give strong comments on whether we should have stricter or looser, because I don't know the current baseline exactly. But I really cannot understand or cannot agree with the wisdom of escalatory nature of doing something that would ultimately protect the airspace of the alliance. So I do think that some of these conversations are long overdue, that we should have had these conversations way earlier. I don't know where exactly these discussions will take us, but I certainly do hope that we can take the decisions that would use rationally the air defense assets that NATO countries have, and reduce the risk to NATO airspace, but also hopefully take off some burden from the Ukrainians.
This is how I feel, at least. I mean, I cannot tell, I'm not in diplomacy or politics, but I feel Putin behaves like a street thug that probing the limits all the time, and if he's not checked, how he reads it, that I can take this space and move on to the next limit, move on to the next limit. There's never enough. So I feel at least shooting down this would mean wasting NATO air capabilities. The rockets are anti-air missiles are very expensive, very hard to produce, but it would send a clear signal that this is our red line, that you cannot overstep. And right now it's a random drone, but tomorrow, for example, it's an Su-34. And we don't want to get to the Su-34, so perhaps we shoot down the drone just to send a signal. But those are opinions, of course. Finland, for example, is buying United States JASSM long-range missiles, which is, why would you have long-range? It's only an attack weapon. So they're sending a very clear message to Russia that we are buying weapons that we could use to potentially destroy targets in Moscow.
The Finns are, when it comes to defense, some serious people. And I'm really happy that that they have joined as allies. So that certainly the more we have countries who know the security environment very well here on the Eastern Front, and who have made relevant preparations to build up the deterrence and, if necessary, the defense for decades, the better for the entire NATO. Now with JASSM, I believe, I may have to check, but I believe that Finns first bought the JASSM or contracted JASSM approximately 10 years, maybe even more years ago. And why I do remember that, I was serving as the defense counselor, a civilian covering defense issues in Washington between 2010 and 2013. And I remember Finnish interest in buying jazz being really big news back then, because after all, these are quite high-end weapons, and again, I believe that back then no other non-NATO country had shown concrete interest, or at least non-NATO European country shown interest in getting these missiles. So happy to have Finns on board, and happy to have them on board with some credible weapons, including the delivery systems, the 64 F-35s that they are getting from the US.
That is insane. I mean, as an Estonian, watching what the Finns are doing, what the Poles are doing, sometimes, I mean, I'm very glad they're on our side and that they're pouring money into this. But with the Poles, at least, sometimes I feel like they set the number of weapons to be purchased before they look at how many are actually needed. At some point, they were talking about 1,000 Western main battle tanks. They don't even have the manpower for this.
Poland is a large country, and I have a very deep respect in Polish military and the military planning. So I'm sure that they know exactly what they are doing. After all, there's a lot of space there in Poland.
Yeah, I'm very glad that they're on our side, and perhaps it ties into also what you were saying about Lithuania building out the brigade to be in Lithuania, because Estonia doesn't have the Suwalki gap. Yeah. Our defense is a little bit different, but that is actually our time. I know you're in a hurry. You have a crazy schedule. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your answers, and hopefully we can do another episode sometimes in the future.
Thank you, Arthur, very much. Thanks for inviting me over. It's been cool to have this discussion with you, and most importantly, thank you what you are doing day in and day out for the victory of Ukraine, and for keeping the world informed of what's at stake and what can be done. It's really important to make sure that the people who care, people who know, people who may have the ability to help, may not even think of it, that we keep these people, let's say, all in the loop, and make sure that we stick together in this very difficult fight. Thank you, my friends, for watching, and you will get another episode next Monday, so be sure to be back. Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye. Royam Slava.